morning, students. I hope all of you are well and sound. So it's going to be our first lesson, I think, right after exams. I hope all of you have done well in your exams. I'm expecting this. So I think in our last video, I have taught you about European Middle Ages. That was chapter 13. Okay, so today we are going to begin chapter 14, and that is formation of Western Europe, and you will find it on page 376, right? So you will find everything I'm going to explain in your books as well, but here I'm going to use like short notes, PDFs, and I will upload these PDFs as well in your classroom. So later you can read from these notes as well. But for detail, I'm referring you your books and the pages, and for plus, like I'm sending you, or I will upload the guides, study guides as well. So let's begin today. What we are going to study, we will learn about the church, reform, and the crusades, and it's chapter 14. So in the last lesson, if you remember, we have learned about the authority and role of the church during the Middle Ages. But today we will learn about changes in the church, and then the launching of the crusades, like how the crusades. I will explain what was crusade, but how it started. Okay, so first, before beginning the lesson, like always, first we will revise the terms, important key terms. Okay. Number one, if you see here, is simony. What is simony? It's a practice of selling positions in the church. Okay, it's a practice of selling positions in the church. Then we have Gothic. What is Gothic? It's a style of architecture of the cathedrals during the Middle Ages. So this type of churches they built at that time. Then we have a name, that is Urban II. He was a pope who called for the first crusade. And again, you should know what is crusade. It's a name of a holy war. Finally, okay, you come to know what is crusade. It's a name of a holy war. And then there is another famous name, that is Richard the Lion-Hearted. Who was he? He was an English king who fought Saladin in the Third Crusade. And at the end, who was Saladin? He was a famous Muslim leader of the 1100s. So here I move, and don't forget that I will upload these notes as well. So the first thing in this lesson, you need to know that what changes did the church undergo, like what he faced, what changes did the church faced in the beginning. So starting in the 1100s, a new age of faith arose in Europe, and popes tried to end certain practices. They wanted to end up. There were some practices going on, and the target was that to end up those practices. So one practice was the marriage of priests. This was the number one. Another was simony, and we just read what was simony. It's a selling of positions in the church. So the popes, they wanted to end up this practice as well. And the third problem popes wanted to reform was the appointment of bishops by kings. This was the third thing they wanted to end up. And the church felt that it alone could appoint bishops. So it would be the right of church, that it won't be the right of a king to appoint a bishop. They felt that this right should be with the church to appoint a bishops. So in the early 1200s, a new church group arose, and they were called the friars. So a new group it arose, and what we call what they called that new church, new group, the friars. Here you see the friars. So they move from place to place, spreading the ideas of church. And it's not only about man, it's all now you will see the role of women. Women also played a role during the age of faith. Many entered convents to devote themselves to God. So the first question I'm going to ask is that what three practices showed that the church needed reform? And we just read the number one was marriage of priests, then number two was the practice of simony, and then last one was the appointment of bishops by the king. These three practices they wanted to end up. Now the next thing, how did the new cathedrals reflect the new age of faith? Okay, I'm going to scroll it down. So the age of faith was shown in the building of great cathedrals. So now we are going to little bit learn about the architecture. Okay, what was the architecture during that Middle Ages? So in the early 1100s, these huge churches were built in a style of architecture called Gothic. But if you find in your book, I have opened your book as well. So I'm going to read from there that in the early 1100s, a new style of architecture known as Gothic developed throughout medieval Europe. And the term Gothic comes from a Germanic tribe named the Goths. Unlike the heavy, gloomy Romanesque building, Gothic cathedrals thrust upward as if reaching towards heaven. So this was their style, that they were reaching as towards heaven. And you can see their architecture pictures in your book. You will get an idea what sort of churches they built that time. On page, I'm referring you the page number, that is 381. All right, 381. You can see a few pictures, and you will get an idea about the architecture of those churches. So the cathedral, they were towering, light streamed in through colorful stained glass windows. So I'm moving towards the question, that is, what was the new style of church architecture? Gothic architecture was the new style, and it soared upwards and seemed to reach towards heaven. Next is about why were the Crusades fought, right? So I mean about the Holy War. Now we are going to learn about the Holy War. So in 1093, the Byzantine emperor, he asked for help against Muslim Turks. So who was asking help? Byzantine emperor, and he was asking help against whom? Muslim Turks. And they were threatening to conquer Constantinople. So the Pope Urban II, he urged the leaders of Western Europe to begin a holy war. He was the person who urged them, who motivated them for a holy war, and that holy war was known as a crusade. So he wanted Christians to gain control of Jerusalem and the entire Holy Land. This was their task. They wanted to gain control. So both knights and common people joined the crusades, and their motive was deep religious feeling. So they were not fighting for some land. The reason behind that war was deep religious feelings. The first crusade began in 1097, and the Crusaders captured some of the Holy Land, including Jerusalem. But on the other side, Muslims, however, they won back some of this land. Then other crusades followed. However, the Muslim, they won, but then what happened? The other crusades followed, and during the second crusade, the Muslim recaptured Jerusalem. So in the second war, in the second holy war, Muslims were the one who recaptured the Jerusalem. But now the holy war is not going to end up. There was there's going to happen another crusade. That was third crusade. So three powerful here you can see three powerful European rulers, they led the third crusade. One was the English king Richard the Lion-Hearted. He fought the Muslim leader Saladin, and the two reached a truce. Where here you see truce. What is truce? It's a peaceful. It's a peace agreement. But the crusades were not over. So they were not over. Like even after that treaty or the peace agreement, they were not over. The fourth crusade ended in disaster. So finally, they came again with a holy war, but it ended in a disaster. So in 1204, the knights looted Constantinople, and they helped. And this helped when they looted Constantinople. This helped make a lasting split between Western and Eastern Christian churches. Okay, so now we are coming towards the question that why did people support the crusades? So rulers and the church wanted Christians to gain control over the Holy Land. This was their first purpose, and they were fueled by deep religious feeling. So I already had explained that what was their motive and how they were it was all about their deep religious feeling that they were fighting these wars. So the next thing we will learn from this lesson, that how did Christians react to unsuccessful crusades. In 1204, the fourth crusade to capture Jerusalem failed. It was failed, and the knights never reached the Holy Land. Instead, they stopped in Constantinople and looted the city. So in the 1200s, more attempts were made to capture the Holy Land, but none were successful. So over time, people began to lose their deep religious feelings. So this is how their deep religious feeling is going to end up towards the Crusades, and they started to care more about their own personal gains. So now they were more concerned with their personal gains. So again, we have a question that how did Christians change their beliefs after the Crusade? People lost their deep feeling and they started to care more about their own personal gains. And the last thing we are going to learn from this lesson is what changes did the Crusades bring. The Crusades had many effects on Europe. At first, the Crusades showed the power of the church in the lives of the believers, and then the failure of later Crusades cut the Pope's power, and the death of many knights reduced the nobles' power. Contact with the East revived trade, and the Christians' harsh treatment of Muslims in the Holy Land led to bitterness that has lasted to the present. Okay, so even in present times, we can see this bitterness. So now again, what are 4 effects of Crusades? Number 1, Pope's power cut. Number 2, nobles' power reduced. Number 3, trade with East revived. And the last thing was the bitterness between Muslims and Christians, which is even lasted in the present times. So what we are going to do, here we end up with this lesson. I have told you it's chapter 14. What you are going to do after reading these notes or understanding them, I recommend you to open up your books and go through this lesson again from your book. Okay, and take good care of yourself. I will catch you in another lesson, and bye bye.